Good evening, everyone. This is Yvette Owens and Edwina Cogdell. We are coming to you from Destiny Speak. We're so glad to be here with you this evening. We have a great evening prepared for you. We are excited about the information that Edwina is going to focus in on tonight about employee resource groups. Many organizations have put them in place, and we're going to talk about the various aspects of them. Actually, specifically, 5 myths and 5 expressed truths about them. If you don't know us or are familiar with us, Destiny Speak, we work with leaders to help create cultures, healthy cultures where everyone can thrive and be their best selves. And so have a strong passion to help leaders become better leaders, and to be able to excel their organization and take them to where they never really thought they could get to, or get unstuck, or what have you. So tonight, I'm going to turn it over to Edwina. She's going to lead us. You can find us if you're joining us on Facebook at Destiny Speak LLC, on Instagram at Destiny Speak, and on YouTube at Destiny Speak. Please, please, please go to YouTube and subscribe to our station. We're building up that channel, and hit that notification bell so every time we post something there, you will hear about it and be able to glean from our experiences, our research, and all that we have to share, and our guests, because on a monthly basis, we host leadership conversation with some colleagues where we talk about different topics. We will be back on June 10th with those same colleagues, as well as some additional special guests. So definitely you want to subscribe to Destiny Speak on YouTube and get that notification bell. So, Edwina, let's go and jump right into the ERG.
Okay, thanks, Yvette. So, for the past couple of years, I've been really busy, working on my PhD, and I'm getting a PhD in organizational psychology. And my dissertation, or my contribution to the field, is around employee resource groups. So I have spent the past couple of years doing a lot of research around that. Over the past 6 months, I've interviewed 25 diverse employees, including ERG members and non-members from 14 companies across several industries. And if you're not familiar with the employee resource group name, they're also called diversity networks. They're called employee business groups. They're called voice of the employee. There are several names for these types of groups. And they date back to the days of what they would call Black caucuses. So the industries that I looked at was banking, technology, health, insurance, pharmaceutical drug manufacturing, financial services, defense, entertainment, and consumer goods. So a broad array of industries and a broad array of diverse employees. Additionally, I conducted a focus group with 7 diverse employees from various industries as well. I'm also reviewing company websites for all the research participants. So through all of that, there's a couple of things that I learned, and I'm in the middle of my data analysis. So really going back and looking at all the interview transcripts and pulling out some themes. So I would like to share with you today a couple of those myths and expressed truths that I've learned from this research. And I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So the first myth is ERGs are always seen as inclusive. I mean, that's really their purpose, in a lot of cases, to create a more inclusive, environment, an inclusive work environment for employees. So the expressed truth of that is there's a real struggle to engage allies. Some participants find it difficult to determine where they fit in ERGs. These employee resource groups were perceived as established for younger employees or for people of color by some participants. There were participants in my research study that said, hey, I'm just not sure where I go. I'm not sure where I fit. Black female participants in my study expressed the disconnect from women's ERGs because they felt like the women's ERGs failed to recognize the intersectionality of race and gender in their programming. One of the quotes that I'd like to leave with you from one of the participants is, I don't feel like I fit their description, but I still go to their events. So just not understanding where they fit in. So Yvette, I don't know what your thoughts are around that, but I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, so I've been associated with several ERGs, and with regards to that, I I didn't. I always saw one is in particular coming to mind as you talk about this specific myth and express truth, and that is that they were only looking to hear one sided of the issue, if you will, or as long as you were promoting the organization, as long as you were talking well about the experience, because the leadership of that organization had really positive experiences within the organization. But if you were expressing some concerns with certain things, it didn't seem like it was welcome, if you will.
Mhm.
So I don't know if they were really broadening their scope as inclusiveness for everyone that even technically fit the organization, right? That ERG, but had varying experiences, if you will. So it was like, okay, well, if you guys only want to really go the happy route, if you will, not that anybody wants the negative route, but I just felt like, okay, don't come with that. Only come with the good story. Then again, it was clearly a group that I should be a part of, but it did not feel like they were looking at the full scope and the spectrum of everyone's experience at the time.
Well, and I think some of the things I heard was, from some of the participants that I interviewed was around, is there room for a conservative voice? Can I really talk about how I really feel about things and still be welcome? So that was some of the things that came out of it too. And I mentioned before, I talked to both members of these groups and non-members. And I specifically asked the non-members, why haven't you joined? You've been at the organization for a while. We don't see any interest in this. And for various reasons, but one of the biggest ones was, I'm not sure where I fit. And for allies and trying to bring people in as allies can be a real struggle when they don't understand how they fit and whether or not the programming is for them. So
Right.
that was like a major learning for me from that perspective. My second myth was membership drives increase ERG membership. How many times do we go to these events where they're there to really improve membership, to get more people to become members of those groups? And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. When I asked specifically the participants from the different industries, what caused you to join? Mainly the things that they came up with was word of mouth
Right.
from members who served as personal ambassadors.
Right.
These were other employees that influenced them to participate in events and also join ERGs. This occurred more often than actual membership drives. It was always that personal touch that someone included them and brought them in that made them want to become a member. One participant called herself the unofficial ambassador for ERGs. So, what people are looking for is a personal invitation. One of the non members that I interviewed, he said, well, I didn't join because no one ever asked me to join. Are they going to ask me to join?
Right.
And then once they do join, they're looking for some type of official welcome when they join, whether it's because I talked about that as well. Like, how did you feel welcome once you did join? And most of them said, well, really, I didn't. If there wasn't anything personal to me. So I think that's something that we can look at if you're going to have these types of groups, is making sure that you have some type of welcome kit, some type of welcome package that explains a little bit more about the experience that they're about to have. I think people would appreciate that. So that was the second myth.
Yeah, and I think the connection, right? Because I specifically, there's two groups that I joined specifically that you wouldn't necessarily think I was going to join, but I really wanted to learn and become an ally in that space. But once I got there, there were people that really connected with me and made me feel welcome. Inviting and saying that they were glad that I was there and all that kind of stuff. So I just kept coming back, right? Because the hospitality, if you will, was awesome there. So yeah, it has to be something that helps you want to really connect and stay connected.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So my third myth was senior leaders' involvement in ERGs and other diversity and inclusion events demonstrates the organization's commitment to diversity and inclusion. And by all means, several of the participants talked about having executive sponsors, senior leaders that spoke at events, that type of thing. And they were very appreciative of that. But when you start talking about how that goes down to their direct leaders, that's where I began to see a disconnect. First of all, employees really take cues from their direct leaders' involvement as a sign of the organization's commitment to diversity and inclusion. So, having senior leaders talk about diversity, inclusion, and equity, and the involvement of their involvement in the ERGs is seen very positively. Where there's a disconnect is when they don't see the same type of involvement from their direct leaders. And as you know, employees really experience an organization through their direct leader. So that disconnect it looks like a misalignment. Some participants actually talked about gauging their involvement in these groups based on the commitment and involvement of their direct managers. If that work that they were doing or participating in or attending events, if they felt like their direct leader, their direct manager valued that participation, then they went for it. But if there was any indication that it wasn't being valued, then they had a tendency to scale back their involvement and their attendance. So there was a correlation there. Diverse representation in higher level execution positions is key to some employees feeling that the organization is sincere and serious about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So they have to know that we can't have the miscommunication. We need alignment from what leaders are saying and what
Right.
they're doing to make sure that the people perceive that organization as being sincere. One of the direct quotes that I'd like to share with you that I got from one of the participants was, I think I would have to believe that they actually care, which I guess I don't. I think it's just a corporate thing that they're doing because they felt like they need to do it. So we want to make sure that it's not perceived as being, checking off the box or window dressing, that you're really serious about what you're doing. Because if it doesn't appear that way, the employee resource groups can be looked at, as something that's not effective, that's not really helping the organization.
Yeah, I have a colleague that whose leader is definitely ingraining the whole ERG experience into her organization, to the point, and I mean, my colleague shares different things that this leader does within their team when she gets the team of leaders together, and how she's holding people accountable through, reading different books and things like that. So I've heard so many great things about this leader and how she's really helping everybody experience the whole DBN and situations throughout her team, that I've personally reached out to her and said, hey, can we have some time together? Because I just want to understand where this passion comes from, and how can someone else duplicate it. So you are absolutely right. When the leader cares, everybody else cares, and at least enough to have the conversation, right?
Mm-hmm. It's just something about being in a particular event, a diversity and inclusion event, and looking over there and seeing your manager,
Right.
or your manager encouraging people to attend and to
Right.
participate. There's just something about that really, speaks to that inclusive environment that all organizations should be striving for. So
Right.
absolutely. My fourth myth that I want to share is Employees know the purpose and value of ERGs. So the expressed truth that I saw in my data was ERG members and non-members really struggled to explain the purpose of these groups and to even describe their value to the organization in tangible terms. Some of the key words that came up several times from several participants that do belong to these groups was a safe space, a community, when they talked about describing the purpose of these groups. The non-members talked about them still, in the same way, being a place for certain people to gather, helping certain people to become more authentic and be able to just live out, their experience at work out loud, being able to be excited about coming into work. Retention was some of the things that came up. I had one person to tell me, hey, what keeps getting me up in the morning to go to work and making me excited is the work that I'm doing within these employee resource groups and that
Oh, wow.
experience. So, depending on where people were, mainly it was around the safe space. I kept hearing that over and over again, and that sense of community, the cultural awareness that some of them can bring, but even though these things are excellent things as far as attracting new talent, retaining people at the organization, but I really was looking for tangible things like, can you tell me what percentage of employees have been retained because of these employee resource groups? And whether I was talking to an ERG leader, ERG member, or a non-member, nobody could really give me those tangible things. A lot of great stuff is happening, but measuring it from a metrics perspective has been pretty difficult. So, I want to share a quote with you. One of the participants said, I see ERGs as serving a really important role in creating inclusion. I see ERGs as serving, that particular role in our work environment. So the purpose and the value, they're seeing it, not really completely clear on how to explain it, but they know it's there.
That's awesome.
So I'm hoping that organizations can find a way to really tangibly explain what the value is that they're bringing. Because even though we know it's there, it would be good to be able to put some metrics around it. My fifth myth is working from home negatively impacted diversity and inclusion events. They just weren't able to gather people in a conference room. They weren't able to gather people in an auditorium. And that was like really negative. The expressed truth is that wasn't the case at all. Most employee resource groups were quick to change their programming to virtual programming and keep everything going during the time that we were all working from home. So the other thing that came out from an expressed truth perspective was, especially employees, participants that worked at large organizations, they described the virtual diversity and inclusion events that were held during our work from home time as really leveling the playing field between home office and local events. A lot of the participants in my study that were in smaller offices felt like they were missing something from not being able to be at a headquarters because there was more events happening. They felt like the employee resource group leaders actually worked in the headquarters, and they just weren't having the connection that other employees in the larger offices were having. So when we started working at home and they started to do virtual events, then everybody was getting the same level of participation. They were getting the same impact of everything being presented from a perspective of levelness. I'm seeing the speaker virtually, and the other person is seeing the speaker virtually. We're all being able to chat or not chat, so it just evened things out. So I think this is something that large organizations really should consider as they begin to return to the office. How can they continue to give those smaller offices the feeling of inclusion that they felt when we were all working at home, when they get back to, when they go back into the office and they start hosting these larger events? So I don't know what thoughts do you have around that, Yvette?
So it just made it accessible, right? So I'm in a location where I can have easy access to those events, but scheduling and you allow other things to get in your way, and it's like, oh, I'll get over there, and next thing you know, it's over before you even get there. But it
Mhm.
was easy to click on the conversation, to participate in the conversation, and still quote unquote multitask, if you will, or at least really be engaged without having to cross a campus or things like that. So I I would suspect that it also made it more accessible for even those who are in close proximity to where those events would happen, not just those who might be, off in different totally different states or locations. So I think it will be huge to be able to make sure those events can continue to have a hybrid, if you will, because we all can't always get there, but we do want to participate. We do want to. And because I was able to do it once, with one conversation, it made me repeat and try different other ones. And so I actually met even more people since being home and participating than I would have if I were in the office.
Okay. So maybe the hybrid approach is a solution to that. If
Right, right.
and another thing I would suggest is start having large events in your field offices.
Hmm.
Bring a speaker there and then live stream from that particular perspective of that field office. I think it just brings a different feel. And if the whole point is for us to be more inclusive, then we need to start pushing our way towards that. Because what we don't want it to feel like that is exclusive, because that's not the whole purpose of these types of groups or these events. So if there's a way to just give that same feeling of inclusion and keep that going on, even when we return to office, I think that's a good setup for organizations to try to conquer and achieve.
Yeah, and organizations, whether it's around the ERG or anything, because we've been virtual, we've had to become more creative in how we engage the audience across the screen, right?
Yeah.
So, treating those who are on the screen just like they're in the room
Hmm.
is going to be huge as well, to be able to not only just have it accessible to those folks, but know that they know that, hey, we are here. We're acknowledged that you're acknowledging that we're here, not only in the just in the beginning and the end, but throughout the entire event, is going to really help people feel more a part of what's happening.
And that's the whole point. So, so Yvette, those are the things that I just really wanted to share tonight, just to get something out. I'm still in the midst of figuring, completing my coding and finishing the data analysis. But these are some things that just emerged fairly quickly when I started going through the transcripts and reading back through things and just, reviewing websites. So, I wanted to share that with with any organization, just so you can at least get the tip top of this information, but there will definitely be more coming at a later date when I have everything packaged and everything.
Well, that's awesome, Edwina, and thank you for sharing this with us. Because I think, people are start trying to. We talk about employee engagement, right? And people are talking about employee engagement. How can you get more of it? So this research is really going to go a long way, especially coming out of the pandemic, because people are going to. How do I help people? How do I engage them? How do I keep them the camaraderie that's been built even virtually,
Mhm.
and how do I meet the needs of those people who will have unique needs coming out of this pandemic? How do we do that as organizations? So we look forward to your research. Again, Edwina is working on her doctorate, and
Mhm.
this is just a itsy bitsy piece of her research that she's been doing. She's put a lot of work into this, and had a lot of people feeding into what she's doing, coming alongside and sharing their experiences. So you want to stay in touch with us, stay in touch with her. You can find her on LinkedIn, at Edwina. Do you use your G? Cogdell, or just Edwina Cogdell?
With Edwina Cogdell.
Edwina Cogdell on LinkedIn. She's also on Facebook. So reach out to her if you have some questions about your organization, or you want more information. She is there to hear your experiences, and where she and our organization can potentially help. Again, this is Destiny Speak. We are on YouTube at Destiny Speak. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell. We're on Facebook at Destiny Speak LLC and on Instagram at Destiny Speak. We post often, and we look for more ways to engage with our audience and expand our audience. So if there's something you would like us to address, knowing that our focus is on leadership and organizations, helping them to develop and be their most authentic, but maximizing their time and their products and their services and their engagement with the people who come alongside them to build out that vision. So connect with us. Our information is scrolling across the screen. Again, I thank my business partner and longtime friend for sharing just a bit of what she's doing. And please contact her and let us know how we can be of service to you. Everyone, have an awesome Memorial Day weekend. If you're here in the States, enjoy the long weekend. If you're like me, I forgot about it's a long weekend, so I didn't plan anything on Monday, which is probably a good thing. So I will get some rest. And I hope you guys get some rest too. Until next time, June 10th, we will be back with Leadership Conversation. And we're talking about leadership, the new look. And we have some guest speakers coming in with us. So until next time, bye-bye, everybody. Have a great night.
Good night.